Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hello there and welcome back to You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. It is your host, Cesar Espino. You can find me at www.cesarrespino.com. And today I have a very special guest. It is Raushawna Price. How are you?
I'm great, Cesar. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, definitely. I'm excited to have you here. I definitely reached out to you and I wanted to get you on the show because I know that there's a lot of great information you can give our listeners, and definitely want to have that conversation with you.
Thank you.
So before we get started, I just want to kind of put the setting and let our listeners and viewers know more about you. Okay. Mm-hmm. So Raushawna Price is the Giver of Awesomeness, is fiercely focused on increasing the confidence and personal beliefs of every client that she serves. She specifically tackles the impact of adult bullying on individuals and groups. She passionately speaks about what goes unspoken and shows others how to move forward to create the life and career they desire. Mm-hmm. Raushawna's education and professional experiences make her dynamic, galvanizing, and real. She's a certified coach, international speaker, and the author of the book, Be a Giver of Awesomeness. Raushawna is married with 2 children and enjoys CrossFit style workouts and jigsaw puzzles in her spare time. That's awesome.
Yeah. Love a good workout, good CrossFit workout, and a jigsaw puzzle. That is for sure my thing that I do love.
Yeah, definitely. So let me know, give me a little bit more about your background and where are you originally from and where you came from?
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in upstate New York. That
okay, cool.
is cold country, Rochester, New York.
Yeah.
Born and raised there. I went to North Carolina A&T State University, studied industrial and systems engineering. So I am a female engineer.
Nice.
Had the science background, loved working in food manufacturing. So I worked for General Mills for 8 years. Yeah, so I've made Cheerios. And a fun fact is that I have been 4 different characters.
Wow.
Like dressing up as like the Trix Rabbit was one of them. Buzz the Bee for the Honey Nut Cheerios. I've been Lucky Charms. Yep. So a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's exciting. So let me ask you, so you have an engineer background and at which point did you decide to switch gears? Because it seems like obviously you're doing something different now. It seems like
I am. Yeah. I mean, I studied engineering because I really wanted to understand the interface between machines and people.
Okay.
Even the best machines, someone had to build it. Someone has to plug it in, turn it on, program it. And so I wanted to understand that interface, which is why I studied industrial and systems engineering. Mm-hmm. And then when I got to a place in my career where I was doing a lot of traveling, and I had a small family, my children were young, I was newly married, maybe 4 or 5 years. And so I wanted to make a career change. And then I went into public education. And most people were like, why'd you do that?
Right.
Right. Yeah. I see her face like, yes, why?
Yeah.
And so I decided that I could take my skills, my transferable skills, as I talk to people about, and use my project management skills, et cetera, to do something else. And so that is what I did. I ended up going from engineering and helping people design equipment to teaching people how to actually understand how you use people, their skills and their talents. And so I ended up working in the 15th largest public school system.
Wow. Okay.
In the United States. Yeah. Served over 170,000 students, 19,000 employees. and I led their hiring. So all of those employees, I was responsible for that. And then after having some pretty terrible experiences with leadership, being bullied at work, getting really sick, I decided that I would take my skills and talents and help other people, because I realized that if I was good enough to do it in all these other places, I could do it on my own and bring my awesomeness.
Wow, that's awesome. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, and so it seems like part of you doing, even when you talk about the engineering and understanding the interface between human and machine, and then even going to the school system, to me, it sounds like you wanted to really get in contact and in connection with people, like really understand the humankind in a different aspect, right? Be able to connect with them at a different level. Is that right?
That is absolutely right. It's, I think too, it's like my love for puzzles and putting things together. So the most challenging people and the most challenging projects, I always find myself gravitating towards them. And at first, I thought that was weird, and people would tell me that's odd, but I think that that's my strength and my superpower, is being able to look at someone who most people have written off in some way, shape, or form and go, they're actually in my life for a reason. They have a gift to give me. And so let me pay attention to what they're doing and what they're saying, because it clearly has something there for me. I just have to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how, so obviously you saw the bullying taking place, and you said, this is not for me. I got to do something about it. How was that transition, to be able to go from working, at the school system, which, I know a lot of people want to work for, many people want to work for the government or any kind of entity of that kind because of really good benefits and whatever the case may be, right? And so for you, how easy or difficult was it to transition from that to becoming your own entrepreneurial type of person?
It was both. It was both. It was easy to say, I can't stay here because the environment had gotten so bad. Normally there's fear of leaving, but my fear of staying had gotten so big that I knew I had to leave, because I had, like I said, I was getting sick physically. I had high blood pressure, stress and anxiety, all of that. And so because of that, I knew I needed to do something different. What that was, I wasn't totally clear. And that's where it was difficult.
Yeah.
Because I had to trust my faith to really just step out there and try and use the skills that I had. I knew that I had done my best to be a great leader, to guide people, to direct people. And so because of that, I knew that I could move forward. And that's what I started with my business. And it's evolved, but I've been open to the evolving.
And you said something that I think is pretty important to for the listeners to take note on, and that's, you trusted your faith, you trusted and said, you know what, something's telling me that this is not right. The fear of staying here is not rewarding anymore. And my faith is telling me do this. And you went ahead and did that. And I know that a lot of times many people get stuck in that one place because they don't trust themselves. Like sometimes it's funny how sometimes I feel that people, don't trust themselves enough. And yet somebody else might say, hey, you can do this. And they still don't believe in themselves. You, on the other hand, said, you know what? No, my faith is there. I want to follow that faith because I cannot take this fear. And so I think that's a really good point to bring up and again, reinforce that with people whenever you're doing anything in your life, in reality. And then, in terms of you, stepping out of that, like the bullying, right? I mean, I think that's a very, critical and sensitive subject to an extent, because a lot of times when we think about bullying, we think about it more in the elementary or middle school or high school years. Yet based on that, it doesn't seem like that's the case, right? So, tell me more about that.
Yeah, we do. Like everybody goes back to middle school and like slamming up against the lockers or maybe like something in the bathroom. Yeah, the experiences that adults have with bullying that I personally have had, that I coach my clients to overcome, really starts small, as snarky comments, as someone saying things like, oh, you're the pet, or you're the boss's favorite, that kind of stuff. And then over time, it escalates to being berated at the table, right? Like everybody's in the meeting and everyone knows so-and-so's had a bad day, so don't get it from them today, right? Like walk on eggshells. I like to talk about the characters that exist. So one of the characters is a minimizer, people that get joy out of making you feel small. Yeah. So for you, Cesar, maybe there's been someone in your life that said, you know, like, oh, you want to do this podcast? Like, who do you think you are? Like, nobody's going to listen. And they like start to what I call poo-poo on your dream.
I like that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you start to question, well, is this right? Or you don't question it. You're like, I'm going to do it, but you don't tell that person. Like you start to guard it in some way.
And I might be wrong in this. I think part of, you know, my opinion is that in high school or middle school or whatever, elementary, when people get bullied, a lot of times the person that's bullying somebody else is because they're going through some challenges, and the way to overcome those challenges by bullying other people, or maybe they're not accepted in one area, and so they feel like they need to have that greater power to feel important. Is that something similar to like the adults where, like, why would somebody, you know, again, poop on your parade, right, on your dream, and just look at and talk to you down? Like, why from your experience, why would people do that?
Yeah, so people do that because you have something. The only way that they can poo-poo on your dream or your parade is the fact that you have something. Most of the time when we talk about bullying, we talk about the other person, what they don't have, how they feel. The bully gets a lot of attention. When I'm talking about adult bullying, I want us to be talking about the fact that they chose you. They could only focus on you because you have something. You might not know what your something is, or your something could be so natural to how you show up, right? One of the rap artists said, I just showed up like this, right? Like just because you showed up like this and they're targeting you, that means you have something. And that something is valuable, and I call it awesomeness.
Yeah, and I see here, you know, and I love how you put it. Bullies choose you for a reason, so always remember, when a bully comes, it is a sign that you have awesomeness. And I love that, because you know what, when you put it from that perspective, you're right. I mean, there's something that is attracting them, and they probably want that. They might envy you, they might dislike you for that, and I'm like, whatever the case may be. And I never saw it from that perspective. A lot of times, you know, I think people might see it from like, well, I'm just getting bullied, and you know, then they become and play the victim. Yet if you turn that thing around, it really comes down to what you just mentioned. Is you're awesome. There's something that you have that has a lot of value that you can bring to other people, and then these people are just trying to get that or take that away from you, right? So how do you deal with those things though?
So the first thing is acknowledging it. So it's bullying happens, it hurts, it's painful. Like, we're not talking about shoving it down like, oh, that didn't happen to me. We're not doing that.
Right.
Actually, what we're doing is bringing it all out and up, because when we bring it out and up, you can then start to see the pattern. You can start to use their words, and really, rather than replaying them in your mind, you know, sometimes we do that. You've had a conversation, someone said something, you're like, oh, now I'm going to replay that over and over. Stop the replay and break it apart, because the words that they say are meaningful and valuable. Let me give you an example. So one of the bullies in my life was my boss. And one of the things that they said to me was, this is what happens when you get ahead of yourself. And it was in a public setting. Other people were there. It was very snarky. And in the moment I was like, oh, but now every time I want to do something that is big, bold, maybe it's never been done, I use those words to help me. Because what happens when I get ahead of myself is I'm actually doing something. I'm a starter. People that start something have momentum, and momentum is valuable. And if we know nothing, we know it's for sure valuable now in the landscape that we're in. Momentum creates momentum. And so if I'm a person that gets ahead of myself, then where would I take that? I could take that anywhere. And that's what you want to do when you're bullied. You want to, after you get over the feelings, and they're real feelings, you want to go back into the replay and break every single thing that someone has done to you or said to you apart, because there's little gifts and nuggets as to who you are that you can use. You just have to put them in a different environment.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing to that is that I do believe that words are very powerful. How you speak to yourself, and even how people speak to you, or vice versa, how
Absolutely.
you speak to somebody else, right? So, everything, like you said, has a huge meaning, and we got to be very careful. I think very careful in how we choose our words to others, specifically to ourselves, though. Like how we're taking care of ourselves and treating ourselves, and how we are complimenting more than anything ourselves to make sure that we know we're loved. We know that we're awesome. And regardless of what's going on outside or who is trying to bully me or do anything of that, you are loved and awesome, right? And I think that's very, very critical.
Yeah, and you brought up something that you can be your own bully if you aren't
Mm,
careful. You
mm-hmm.
can, yeah,
Yeah,
you can be minimizing yourself. We call it self-sabotage, but it can be the fact that you are getting joy out of making yourself feel small. Or I see this a lot with clients that I coach that come from a family where the family has risen to a certain level of
mm-hmm.
expectation around what it means to live. And now you have an inner call, an inner gut that says, I want more. But yet when you're around your family, you downplay everything and you talk bad about yourself. Like, well,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm just doing this. I just have that. And before you know it, you're bullying yourself to play small. You're minimizing yourself.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't see that, but that makes actually a lot of sense. And it comes down to that. I was talking to a client last time, and I was explaining to them one thing that they tend to do a lot is like they're beating themselves for something that they might have done, right? And always, saying, well, I'm dumb, or I'm this, or I'm that, whatever the case may be. I mean, that when you think about it, you're bullying
Exactly.
yourself, and definitely putting yourself down, when in reality, you have to change that program. You have to change the way you say that. And instead of doing that, it's like, maybe that was me back then, but it's not me anymore, and I'm going to
That's
change
right.
that. So
That's right.
yeah. And so would you consider that it's good to also confront the person that's bullying you, if you notice that, or do you just take note of that, or how would you react to that?
It depends on the relationship and the behavior.
Okay.
So if these are relationships that you can't get out of, right? These are family members, these are siblings, these are people that you didn't necessarily choose to be in your life, but they're in your life and you have relational connections to them. You want to have a conversation to make them aware of their behavior and how it impacts you. It's really about you saying to them, you said this, you did this, and how this is how I'm perceiving it. And so
Right.
we need to have a conversation. And then based on that conversation, you either create a new relationship, a new boundary, etc. And then
Right.
there are other people that you just get to choose.
Mm.
And if you want to have a conversation with them, great. If not, you may just choose to take your gifts and talents and move on. Take your awesomeness and move it in a new direction.
Right.
It really depends on what it is what you need from that relationship. Sometimes the bully comes, they teach you the lesson, and it's time for you to move on.
I love that. They teach you the lesson. And I do believe that there's always a lesson to be learned in anything.
Yeah.
And you have to digest it, see what is the lesson, what is something that I take away from here. Because every experience, exactly, whether you foresee it as being a bad experience or a good experience, there's always going to be something to learn.
There's always something.
Very similar to, like, I don't think that there's any failures. There's only lessons, right? So you definitely want to be able to look into that. Now,
Yeah.
you came up with this book. So tell me more about your project, that book, and what inspired you to write the book.
Yeah, so the book is Be a Giver of Awesomeness,
Mm-hmm.
and the subtitle is Discover, Guard, and Give. And I
Mm.
wrote the book. Yeah, I wrote the book after I went and I was speaking at a conference, and that was really like happenstance. A friend of mine reached out to me and was like, "You should apply for this." And I was like, "I don't even know what I'll talk about," right? Like,
Yeah.
ever happened to you? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And I had been writing out all of my experiences. I had been coaching people and talking about my experiences, but from a place of superheroes and supervillains.
Mm.
And so I had this concept that bullies they have potential to be superheroes, but they use their super in such a way that they're a villain, or at least perceived that way. And I went and I spoke on a stage about this. I was in Dallas, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came off stage, women were asking to buy my book, and I didn't have a book. So I went home and wrote a book in 4 months and said, well, if it's going to help one person, it's worth it. And
Right.
wrote the book, decided to break it up into 3 parts so that people could just, first you read the book to start discovering what the world around you is saying about who you are and your awesomeness. Then you have to begin to guard it, and that's that middle section with all of the awesomeness dealers. And then the last part is you have to give it. What good is your gift, your awesomeness, if you don't give it to the world?
Wow, I love that. I really, really love that. And so when you speak on stage, do you normally speak with a group of people that have been bullied, or what is the audience that you're speaking to?
I speak to either women that are going through something in their life individually, they're stuck or they're feeling like they can't move forward. And so I'm helping them understand that perhaps they've been bullied because they might not even have awareness around it. They may just think this is just kind of how it is. Right. I also speak to leaders and companies and organizations where this behavior could be a part of the culture that has been really prevalent and existing and even promoted, is this sense of, to be a leader, I have to actually be a bully. I have to put people down. I have to take their experiences from them and make them know who's in charge and who's the boss and all of that. And so helping leaders understand that you can be a fantastic leader that has influence and power and authority, and that does not require you to be a bully.
Right. That's just trigger another thing. So do you see that there's probably more female people versus male people that are being bullied in the workplace? Or is it equally the same?
It's equally the same. The behaviors show up different.
Okay.
So a lot of females that experience bullying, it may be so covert that they feel something, they don't have language to it. Or they write it off as, well, that's just how she is or he is. Mm-hmm. For men, it can be very overt. And it's a lot of times very verbal. Men use a lot of language and yelling and aggression, whereas women may play more of the mind games around the manipulation and the sarcasm and all of that. But either way, you know you've been bullied when you feel like you want to, what I call turtle or hide, where you could be in the middle of a meeting, sitting in your seat, feeling like I want to disappear, or getting on your phone and feeling like I'm going to sit here, but I'm not saying anything. I want to be seen, but I definitely don't want to be heard.
Right. Got it. And I would imagine that when you're talking to corporations, are you dealing with their HR department too? Like, because I can already see me working, when I was working in the corporate world, I can see that being, something happening all the time in multiple locations. And so a lot of times, is the HR or the executive team that you have to work with to be able to trickle down the effect of positive attitude. Yet if you don't focus on that, then I can already see how that can spread. So was it mostly working you with HR people and the executives, or just leaders?
Executive leaders primarily, and I may have been brought in through the HR department. However, a lot of organizations have HR professionals that need this training and this understanding as well, because they can be a part of the problem versus the solution.
Okay, cool.
And so, so helping them understand that even if someone comes and says that they're in a position where they feel like they're being bullied, sometimes the best thing is not to tell that person to go back and have a conversation or to mediate it. It's really to listen and understand, to help them navigate the relationship. Additionally, professional development is another department that has brought me into companies and organizations, because even a manager, right? Like, lots of great companies have succession plans, and they do a lot to develop leaders to be ready to lead or to be ready to take on more. And having conversations that go deeper than their situational leadership and their style and their Myers-Briggs is a part of the work that I do. I help leaders understand how they perceive conflict, because when you perceive conflict, there's an opportunity for a bully to show up if you don't have the right tools and skills to navigate the conflict.
Got it. And one of the things that you do, actually, is with all your work, is building confidence and that personal belief, right? Can you give us a couple of tips on how you go about doing that, and what can probably even people do, that are watching this or listening to this to build that confidence? Because I think that's one thing that many people are lacking, just in anything. And even right now in this time, it's like that confidence level is way low. So what are some things that maybe people can do to build up that confidence?
Build up your confidence. The first thing that I tell everyone to do is start writing down the words that are being spoken to you. Even if you're unsure, there is a narrative from someone in your life. And you might not think it's a good narrative, but you can use their words to create a new narrative. So start writing down everything that people are saying to you. Even if someone's calling you to talk about the terrible things that are happening in the world, they're calling you. So because they're calling you, that means you're a resource. That means you're trusted. That means you're top of mind. So you're memorable. Start there. Start there in the words and the actions. And then those words and actions are the things that you want to start to then live out to build up your confidence. So your confidence is built by every choice you make. So the second thing is making choices that you value. So in the event someone invites you to go somewhere and you really don't want to go, this is your chance to build your confidence, to actually value your no and say, I don't want to go. I don't want to do that. And when you do that more often, when you're in a situation where someone is saying something or doing something to you, you'll be able to use that inner confidence to actually say, wait a minute, don't talk to me that way. I need you to say that differently. Let's pause this conversation. And so those are some quick tips.
I love that. No, definitely love that. And I definitely, I think that's something, that people can utilize and put into practice now. I love that. And so that's definitely something great. Now, in terms of people, so do you work individually with individual clients too, or just corporations, or how do you work with people?
Yeah, so I work with individuals as well as companies. So for individuals, you can go to giverofawesomeness.org and join my Facebook group. That's the best way to start getting connected, because for anyone that wants to work with me, I want you to know what you're getting first. And so that's a great place to go to just see more of who I am. There's lots of trainings out there. And the way that people then can get connected is by having an Ask Me Anything call. Because sometimes we have to just start by having a conversation. Some people don't even know they're being bullied. And then from there, we go into what the right path is for each individual.
Right. And a lot of times people are even afraid to just ask the simple questions. And sometimes asking those simple questions can get you the answers that you've been seeking for and you need, right? And so definitely don't be afraid of doing that from that perspective. And so are there any particular things that you do on a day-to-day basis to just stay pretty awesome every time?
Yeah. So I work out at least 3 to 4 times a week. Now we're in a different situation. So working out at home is a little bit more challenging, but I have some creative ways of using soup cans and using like Coke bottles and those kinds of things as weights. So that's one thing that I do, is trying to stay active, and moving is a great way that I keep my energy up. Another thing that I do is I enjoy connecting with other people, and not just like to like be connected, but like, how are you doing?
Yeah.
It's actually one of my husband's pet peeves, because sometimes I'll ask people like, how are they doing? And we'll engage in this deep conversation and I'll uncover something that they are struggling with. And he's always like, oh, here we go again. Like, like we were just coming for dinner.
Right. Yeah, exactly. No, that's awesome. And then obviously you like spending time with your kids, and then doing all those different puzzles. I think that's good, connecting to that aspect, because it also helps you, do other things in life too, right?
Yeah. So I'm a jigsaw puzzle junkie, and I don't have any genre. So it doesn't matter to me what's on the picture. It's really the puzzle of what I'm putting together. And I also find that jigsaw puzzles help me solve other problems. So I can be working on a puzzle, and in the back of my head, I'm like, ooh, that's good content. Or somebody asked me this question and I didn't know, but now I find the answer.
Yeah. And I bet that's also part of the engineering mind too, because engineers always think, is that aspect. You got to be challenged. You want to get that challenge. So obviously, I'm sure you're not doing like the 10 puzzles or 10-piece puzzles. You're probably doing like the 250, 500 piece puzzles or something like that.
Yeah, 500 is like my sweet spot. I have a 1,000-piece puzzle, and I've already asked for Christmas coming up next year, year later, for a 3,000 piece puzzle.
Wow, that's amazing. That's awesome. That is very awesome for sure. So let me ask you one last thing. If you've given us a lot of great tips, if there was one thing that you can tell people besides what you've already mentioned, one thing that you can tell people they can do today to overcome anything in their lives in this current state of mind, what would that be?
The one thing I tell anyone is to remember this, that you don't need someone else to save you, that you can save yourself. That's it. You can save yourself. You can start today by really listening to the world around you, because it's speaking to you to try to tell you the gifts and talents and what you're supposed to do. So start saving yourself today, and that's how you move forward. That's how your awesomeness comes out. The more you give it, the more it will come to you, and it'll expand.
Right. Yeah, and I'll add to that, and I think that's critical. A lot of times we as people tend to find or look for validation elsewhere when the validation or the ideas are here within you, right? And you have to just make sure that you take that. So I really, really love that. So besides Facebook, where else can people find you if they wanted to work with you or reach out to you? Or is that the best place?
So Facebook is like the place where if you want to know, like, is she really who she is, that you'll see. Yes.
Yeah.
But you can also go to my website, RaushawnaPrice.com, and there's some great information there. And you can find me on LinkedIn as Raushawna Price and on Instagram as Giver of Awesomeness.
That is awesome. Yes. Let me just make a note of that. And so, and also just so you guys know, for all the ones that are listening and watching this, I'm definitely going to have that information here so you guys can connect with her and reach out to her. And definitely, you guys got to pick up the book. And actually, you said that you wanted to offer the listeners a ebook of yeah, that's awesome. So make sure I'll put the link there so you guys can go out and get that too, and just make sure you guys pick up that copy of that book. Raushawna, anything else that you wanted to maybe let the listeners know before I let you go?
So I think the last thing is that awesomeness living is yours. So the 7 Secrets to Awesomeness Living is the ebook that you can get with that information, because especially in today's society and as we think about moving forward, you don't have to settle. Awesomeness living can be yours, and there are 7 steps that'll get you there. So if you want it, make sure you get it.
Yeah. So you and in that book you go in detail on those 7 different levels and just kind of awesome.
I think about it like a foundation, like a house. The first one is, the first secret is build your foundation, set your foundation, and know that what you know and believe, make sure it's still working for you. Kind of like with cement. When you're building a foundation of a house, right. Cesar, you know this, right? Like the mixture of what's in there, it really depends. And so we talked earlier about faith and about beliefs. We talked about education, etc. Sometimes we're given those things. When we're born into families, we have these mixtures, but they may not work for us. So when you're trying to build your life and do great things, make sure you set your foundation and put what's in it that you really need to move forward.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely the most important thing of anything, right? And understanding that foundation, what is the end in mind, and what is your vision? What are you trying to accomplish? So that's
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Raushawna, it was very, very nice having you. I really had a great time speaking to you and really enjoyed this. So thank you so much for coming on to the show and sharing your knowledge with our listeners and viewers.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. And for the rest of you guys, please do me a favor. Make sure that you comment, you share, you subscribe, and you comment on this video, this interview. Please make sure that you check us out on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, Spreaker, Spotify, all different platforms. And make sure that you stay tuned for the next interview. Have a wonderful time and enjoy it. Bye.
Hi, I'm Cesar Espino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you tuned in to this podcast. You can find me at Spreaker.com, where you can like and subscribe And to learn more about myself and my services, you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com, or you can also find me at Facebook under Cesar R. Espino. Once again, thanks for joining me. I am looking forward to having you at the next episode, and know that you truly can overcome anything.